This is what makes me angry about this administration's position and the neocons in both parties who continue to fuel this proxy war with Russia, that the Biden administration is a regime change war against Russia. The Ukrainian people and their lives are the fodder in this war. If they really were compassionate and cared about the Ukrainian people, they would have jumped at the opportunity to lead brokering a peace treaty between these two countries as early and as quickly as possible. Not only did they not do that, they directly stopped attempts being made by other countries to bring both Russia and Ukraine to the table to actually have these negotiations.
Tulsi Gabbard has been on a tour recently, going on shows like Bill Maher and absolutely destroying him on his own show, and now going on shows like Valuetainment with Patrick Bet-David and destroying people like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and the rest of the neocons out there, rightfully so. Tulsi Gabbard does an absolutely great job, as well as Patrick Bet-David whenever he chimes in here. But I definitely think Tulsi Gabbard does a great job of, destroying all the woke narratives that the right, quote unquote, right, is pushing nowadays. We call them, Patrick Bet-David calls them, Tulsi Gabbard calls them neocons now. That's what Ben Shapiro is. It's very, very obvious that he is. And the narratives and the propaganda that he is spewing on his show on a daily basis is very harmful to this country, but also the world, because America does have a very strong influence on the world. And we do have our hands in a lot of different pots right now when it comes to these violent wars that are happening. And we're stoking the flames of them. And Ben Shapiro, whether he wants to admit it or not, is also somewhat responsible for this, because it's not like he can pull the strings. I don't think he's doing that. He's not pulling the strings to get us involved in these wars, but he is. People like his opinions. People really follow Ben Shapiro closely. I know it blows my mind as well, but people are very loyal to Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. They have a very loyal fan base. And, if you're still watching them at this point after what they did to Candace Owens and everything, then you're very, very loyal to, and a very much so loyal to a fault at that point. But they have a loyal fan base. And a lot of people, they just take whatever Ben Shapiro says as gospel. And if he's saying that it's good for us to be involved in these wars, well, that influences a large portion of the population to also support us being involved in these wars and push us further into more wars in the future when the opposite needs to happen. Patrick Bet-David and Tulsi Gabbard do a great job of calling out this nonsense. Let's check this out.
There's a growing number of Republicans, Vinny being one of them. It's like, why are we giving these people any money? Secure the border. Right? Where do you stand on that? What should we be funding? Intervention, isolation? I'm of the capacity of we got to do something. What do you think from American First strategy? If you're part of this administration, what should we be funding? Where should our priorities be as an American?
I think that the dialogue is too often, are you an isolationist or are you an interventionist? I think both are the wrong answer. Also, the wrong answer is like, oh my gosh, there's something bad happening in the world. We have to do something. Well, what if this something you're thinking about is actually going to make things worse, not better? Sometimes the answer is not to just do something to make ourselves feel better, to say, well, gosh, some action needs to be taken. No, we've got to actually think about what are the different options? What are the courses of action? What serves the interest of our country? What serves the interest of our security? What will actually help in this situation versus what's going to make it worse? All of this increased funding.
That's definitely something that Ben Shapiro and those neocons out there, they're not thinking about that. They just know that they have an allegiance to, especially the certain country over in the Middle East. They have an allegiance to Ben Shapiro's favorite country. And emotionally, they're saying we must be involved in this, no matter what the consequences are for us, for that war, for the Palestinians, for anybody. It's not just that war, but it definitely seems like it's stepped up to a new level ever since that Middle East conflict has broken out, for sure. The neocons pushing this pro-war agenda has definitely taken, it's going to a new level ever since that happened. I think, Tulsi Gabbard here says that we shouldn't be isolationist or interventionist. I think that we should be isolationist, at least for the time being, until the major, obvious problems of America are solved. It's cool to be an interventionist whenever you can go into these countries from a place of like, we have solved all these problems in our country. We don't have much else to solve here. Let's go help other people. But if you're going into these countries and you're like, hey guys, our country is absolutely going down the drain right now, but we'd like to help you instead of helping us. It's like, why the hell are we doing that? So at least for the time being, we need to be isolationist, I think. Let me know if that's absolutely crazy in the comments.
This is what makes me angry about this administration's position and the neocons in both parties who continue to fuel this proxy war with Russia, that the Biden administration is a regime change war against Russia. The Ukrainian people and their lives are the fodder in this war. If they really were compassionate and cared about the Ukrainian people, they would have jumped at the opportunity to lead brokering a peace treaty between these two countries as early and as quickly as possible. Not only did they not do that, they directly stopped attempts being made by other countries to bring both Russia and Ukraine to the table to actually have these negotiations.
If you enjoy content like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
I saw it back then, before the war started, after it started. And yes, Russia and Putin was wrong to invade Ukraine. There's no question about that. But I always knew that the only way this ends is if there is a negotiated end to the war. One where both Russia and Ukraine are not necessarily happy with how it all ends, but more lives are saved. The fact that the Biden administration has blocked those attempts to bring about an end to this war over and over and over again should send a strong message about whose interests they really have at heart. It's not the people of Ukraine. So the more,
and it's also not the people of America. It's simply themselves in their pockets, you know, because it's so easy for us to say. This is kind of the stance that I've been taking recently in these videos. I used to say, because it's easy to say and it's very easy to agree with, why the hell are we intervening in all these wars, all these foreign countries, when we have the border problem, the crime problem across the country, the inflation problem, the list goes on and on. That's very easy to say. The problem is, if we stop giving support to these foreign countries and getting ourselves involved in these wars, save that money and put it into things that we actually need help with within our own country, well, these problems, the border, inflation, crime, these things that everybody always brings up instead of, you know, getting involved in these other wars, these problems that we are listing off as problems, they don't view as problems. Joe Biden and the current regime that's running the country don't view these things as problems. The people who are really running the world, who are above our government, they don't view these things as problems. They have done this on purpose. They are the solution to the problem of these things not happening. You know what I'm saying? So even if they pull out of all these wars, we have all this new money that we can spend, even though we can just apparently just print money whenever we want anyway. But we stop funding all these wars. We stop stoking the flames of all these wars. We just focus on ourselves. What that really means to Joe Biden and, you know, his regime and the people who are really running the world above them, what that really means is like, oh, let's just focus on ourselves and put more trans people in charge of the military. Like that's the problems that they would solve. They're not solving the border problem. They're not solving the crime problem across the country. They're not trying to solve the inflation problem. They're not going to do any of that. So the real issue is like getting people in charge who view these problems as actual problems. Because if you try to talk to anybody who is calling the shots right now about the crime happening in any of these cities like New York or anywhere like that, they always say, oh no, like look at the statistics, the crime is actually going down. Or if you look at, you know, try to ask them about the border problem, you have Joe Biden in the debate saying, oh no, there's actually not that big of a problem at the border. Border Patrol actually endorsed me. And then Border Patrol tweets out, we've never endorsed Biden or anything like that. And we never will endorse Biden. So it's like they always just lie about it. They never actually acknowledge these things as problems because they don't view them as problems. They are solutions. So yeah, it's easy to say, let's pull out all of these wars and just fund the problems in America that we need solved. Well, the problem is we have the wrong people in power to where they don't even view them as problems.
More money that's being poured at this, like I said, they're just saying, well, we got to stop Ukraine from losing. None of them can define what does a win in Ukraine look like. If you asked different leaders in Washington, they'll say, oh, well, a win is Ukraine has all of their sovereign territory restored, including Crimea. There is no real world where that happens. That's just not, that's a fantasy. Okay, well, maybe it's, I spoke to someone the other day. She's like, well, you know, don't you want to see Ukraine win? And I said, what does winning look like? And she said, well, it puts them in a stronger position of leverage to be able to negotiate an end to the war. Well, that stronger position has come and gone. So now what does a win look like? Well, it just means not losing. So as we look through history, there are different examples of this. Are we, the United States, do we really want to be in a position to continue to fund a war of attrition where Russia has far more military hardware, far more bodies to fuel their military, and a military industrial complex that can reconstitute their losses far more quickly than our government even estimated that they would be able to. So are we, the American people, signing up for a forever war to stop Ukraine from quote unquote losing? Is that how we want to spend $60 billion? I have not.
It's not how we want to spend it, but that might be how they want to spend it. Because, like I said, this is all just to fund their pockets. They're all sold out to weapons manufacturers. And of course, if you're involved in a bunch of wars, weapon manufacturers are going to make a whole lot of money, right? So they want to be involved in as many wars as possible. And they want to be involved in them forever. Like Tulsi Gabbard is saying, do Americans want to be involved in a forever war? Well, no, I don't. But I'm not being paid by weapons manufacturers. If I was, then maybe I would. It's very, very simple. But a lot of people are like Ben Shapiro and them are just scared to say the stuff out loud, or they don't want to say it for whatever reason. I know they know it's the truth, but they just won't say it. That's why I've lost a lot of respect for them. Tulsi Gabbard is completely correct. And I wish, at this point, after the things that Zelensky has said and done, and the fact that it's very obvious that there's something else going on, it's not that the American people or the American government just has a soft spot for Ukraine. I understand that they're supposed to be an ally or whatever. They're trying to get into NATO. I understand. But there's something else going on here, and it's gotten to the point where Zelensky is lying and trying his absolute best to get the American people to support Ukraine. And he had our support at the very beginning of the war. There was Ukraine flags everywhere. Now it's just, I'm at the point where I kind of want them to lose at this point. And I don't mean like, I don't want harm done to the Ukrainian people, of course. Like, I don't want that to happen. That's horrible. But at this point, like, I want them to surrender. And I just want Zelensky to have to admit defeat and accept defeat because of how harmful he's been in this situation, But let me know in the comments, do you agree with Tulsi Gabbard, or do you agree more with people like Ben Shapiro that we should be involved in these wars because America is this great force for good, and the more places that we're involved in, the better these places are going to get, because that's what the neocons think. That's what people like Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and all these people who just want to be involved in as many wars as possible, that's what they think, especially when it comes to the Middle East. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole Tulsi Gabbard and Patrick Bet-David conversation here.